Jasmine Crockett calmly responded after Lauren Boebert tried to pressure the witness with a long and forceful question. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Boebert began. "Ms. Katzen, should bureaucrats enforce rules and regulations that were never delegated by Congress?" Katzen replied slowly. "It's not the bureaucrats themselves. It would usually be the agency, the people working in those agencies." Boebert pressed again. "So should those people enforce rules that Congress did not give them?" Katzen answered, "No, and that kind of enforcement does not happen." Boebert continued. "Well, Ms. Katzen, you said that even though some elected officials think agencies are out of control, no agency is a free agent. They can only do what Congress has allowed." "Correct." "Yes, that's right," Katzen said. "I agree with that," Boebert replied. "But we still see agencies enforcing rules that were not approved by Congress. For example, in the last 5 years, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, has changed its long-standing position on firearms 3 times using internal decisions. Do you agree with that process at ATF?" Katzen tried to explain, "I don't have any issue with what ATF has done because in each..." But Boebert cut in, "You just said that they can only do what Congress tells them to do. These changes now mean that products the ATF once said were legal are now illegal under the National Firearms Act." She continued, "Recently, the ATF made a rule to classify pistol braces, stabilizing braces, as short-barreled rifles, which are heavily regulated. This decision means that gun owners who have around 40 million firearms with those braces could now be considered criminals, felons even." She then asked, "Ms. Katzen, would you say this is a violation of the separation of powers? Because this rule didn't come from Congress. The ATF made it on its own and turned millions of Americans into possible felons." Katzen replied, "With respect, I was trying to answer." Katzen calmly attempted to answer. "As I was saying before you interrupted me, the ATF had in each of these cases enough statutory authority from Congress, and any challenge to that..." Boebert interrupted again. "Ms. Katzen, it is my time. Congress never gave the ATF permission to ban pistol braces. Congress never gave them the authority to turn millions of Americans into felons overnight." She continued, "So I refer back to your statement. You said these agencies are not free to act on their own and can only do what Congress tells them. But now you're saying Congress is not specific. Excuse me. Thank you. My time." Katzen attempted to speak again, but Boebert cut her off, saying, "No, ma'am. It's my time. Thank you." Katzen replied softly, "Oh, I see. You're not interested in my views." Boebert restated, "It is my time. Thank you." Then she moved on, referencing Katzen's earlier testimony. "You stated that Congress delegates power, but some officials are quick to criticize agencies for doing what they're instructed to do, carrying out the law. Well, last year, the Biden administration's EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers tried to regulate wetlands and ditches under the Clean Water Act. But that's clearly not what the Clean Water Act was intended for. It was meant to manage major navigable federal waters." She added, "That rule was recently overturned by the Supreme Court. So would you agree that the Biden administration tends to purposely misinterpret laws to push their political agenda?" Katzen replied, "No, ma'am. I believe the law keeps evolving. The Supreme Court itself had trouble with this interpretation." Boebert responded, "I haven't seen any changes to that law here in Congress. The original intent of the Clean Water Act has not changed. So I believe this is yet another example of the Biden administration and the EPA misinterpreting the law to serve their agenda." She then addressed Ms. Patterson. "Ms. Patterson, in your testimony, you spoke about the regulations created by the Biden administration. You said, 'Are these rules harmful to our well-being?' Hardly. Are they wrapping us in red tape? Certainly not." She continued, "Let's talk about the Sackett family, who were affected by this Clean Water Act decision. They were threatened with large fines. The Sackett family was threatened with fines of $10,000 per day. Their property was labeled as a wetland, and they were blocked from building their family home." Boebert added, "It may not be a $2.5 million home like yours, but that sounds like a lot of red tape to me." The witness responded, "I take that as a personal comment and disagree with it." Boebert asked, "Do you disagree that this was government overreach?" Before the witness could respond further, another member of the committee stepped in. "Mr. Chairman," they said, Can we ask all members to respect civility, the rules of decorum, and the integrity of the witnesses who are here today at their own expense? Insults are not a substitute for real arguments. The chairman then advised everyone, let's follow the House's standard of decorum and proceed properly. Then Miss Jasmine Crockett from Texas was given the floor for 5 minutes. She began, "This committee always raises my blood pressure. I come here prepared every time, but someone from that side always does or says something ridiculous that throws me off." She took a breath and continued, "Okay, let's begin. Miss Katzen, first I want to apologize. That was uncalled for. Let me do what the previous speaker would never do. Be an adult in this room." She paused briefly and then said, "Now I want to correct some of the nonsense that was said earlier. Unlike Miss Boebert, I'm legally trained. I've passed several bar exams. I've also been a legislator before coming to Congress." She continued, "Let me start by clearing up the record. And if you want to add to it, feel free. There was a lot of talk about the ATF. My colleagues love bringing up guns." Crockett gave a small smile. "I'm from Texas, so let me be clear. I also own guns. Yes, Democrats own guns too. I'm licensed to carry. That's a regulation. And that regulation didn't stop me from getting a firearm." She added, "So there was a discussion about the ATF. I didn't plan to go there today, but since it came up, I honestly wish the ATF would run amok, because from what we're seeing." Crockett continued, saying the people in the chamber often don't have the courage to push for what many call common sense gun regulations. She pointed out that the Second Amendment, as written in the Constitution, assumes that people would use common sense. Sadly, she added, that hasn't been the case, and that failure has cost lives. She referred back to earlier testimony about unintended consequences. Lawmakers, she said, are supposed to be able to anticipate those outcomes when they write laws. But in reality, not only have unintended consequences been ignored, even predictable and foreseeable ones have been overlooked. That, she said, is why people on her side of the aisle support regulations. Their version of common sense, she explained, doesn't mean serving corporate interests. Instead, it means being accountable to the people. She continued, "I'm here to save lives. That's my job. I'm not here to protect the profits of corporations. I'm here for the individuals, the real people, who voted me into this seat." Then she shifted focus to her home state. "Let's talk about Texas," she said. "There's always something interesting coming out of Texas. Sadly, my state chose not to be a part of the national power grid. They wanted to avoid what they called red tape." She paused for a moment, then explained the consequence. "That decision cost lives. During the winter storm, I had just been sworn into the Texas House, and suddenly I started getting phone calls. It was because of something real, something called climate change. I know no one on the other side of the room seems to acknowledge it, but climate change is real." She described the storm in Texas as severe. "We're supposed to be the energy capital not just of America, but of the world, both for clean and fossil energy. But even then, we couldn't keep the lights on, all because we didn't want to deal with regulations." She emphasized again, "And the cost of that? Human lives." She added, "That's what people keep missing. Just like what happened in East Palestine. The cost there, too, was human lives." Jasmine Crockett went on, saying that some people don't seem to treat human lives as a real cost. The only thing they focus on, she said, is money. She made her stance clear. "I'm not here because of corporate money. I'm here because of people." Then she shifted her tone slightly. "I usually run out of time. They always give me a lot to cover. But today, because of how you were treated earlier, I want to give you the chance to explain more." She looked to the witness. "You were talking about agencies and how they only act on what they're allowed to do. And that's what I understood, too. If the ATF had more authority, I'm pretty sure they would have banned assault rifles by now, the same weapons that keep killing our children in this country every single day." She then offered the last 20 seconds of her time. Miss Katzen responded calmly, "Thank you. I appreciate your comments, and I don't disagree with what you said about the situation in Texas. They chose not to join the national energy grid, and they paid the price. Real consequences." She added, "What I was trying to say earlier is that the ATF has been acting within the limits set by Congress. And if they ever go beyond that, This is the most litigious country in the world. Someone will take them to court. And if they're wrong, if they overstep, the courts will say so. I fully believe that. She paused, then said, "Thank you again for your comments." Jasmine Crockett replied, "Thank you so much. And with that, I yield." In a system where policies shape lives, let's choose leaders who value people over power, and who never forget that behind every regulation is a human story.